I'm Emily, 22 years old, and that day was my college graduation. A moment I had imagined for 4 years, picturing my parents sitting in the audience, waving and smiling with pride. But when the stage lights turned on, when applause filled the auditorium, their seats remained empty. My mom had texted me, "We're too tired after a long week at work. Hope you understand." I nodded, tried to understand, tried to believe they couldn't come because they were just too busy. But then, right before I stepped out of my dorm room, I opened Instagram. One photo, my mom, dad, and my younger sister Chloe, beaming with joy in the middle of a shopping mall, arms full of designer bags. The caption read, "Shaking off exhaustion, helping our baby heal from heartbreak." My sister had just broken up with her boyfriend and they skipped my graduation just to go shopping with her. I stared at the screen, my lipstick still wet, my throat tightening. I didn't cry. I just quietly stood up, walked out of that empty room, carrying yet another crack in my chest. Not because they didn't come, but because I had still hoped they would. Have you ever stood alone on the most important day of your life? No one there to pat your shoulder, no one looking at you with pride. If you've ever been through something like that, I'm here and I want to hear your story. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I used to believe that if I was obedient, quiet, never a bother, I would be loved. I was the kind of child people called easy. I didn't cry or ask for much, didn't throw tantrums in the middle of the night, didn't pout over not getting a new doll. I did my homework on my own, made my own milk, sat quietly in the corner whenever mom said, "I'm busy with Chloe right now. Can you play by yourself?" And slowly, I learned how to make myself invisible so things at home could stay peaceful, so my parents wouldn't have one more thing to worry about. Chloe is 4 years younger than me. From the moment she was born, the house seemed to revolve around a new son, one that could cry louder, ask cuter, and capture every bit of attention in the room. Her birthdays were always filled with flowers, balloons, and three-tier cakes with her favorite cartoon characters. My birthdays, usually just a rushed message from mom. "Happy birthday, sweetie. I'm in a meeting, so I can't call." And then silence. One year I made myself a birthday card and placed it on the dining table. The next morning, mom sighed, smiled softly and said, "You're so sweet. You're so mature. You make me worry less." I used to feel proud of that until I grew up and realized when a child is praised for being mature, it often means they've learned how to endure everything in silence. I remember the first time I won first prize in the school's drawing contest. The theme was family home. I drew a small wooden house with two sisters standing in the yard and our parents sitting far back under the porch. My teacher said my artwork was full of emotion and the school invited parents to attend the award ceremony on Saturday morning. I was so excited bringing the invitation home, picturing mom hugging me, smiling proudly as I walked up to receive my award. But that Saturday morning, mom just said, "Saturday? I need to bake Chloe's birthday cake. I can't make it, but you go ahead. You're a big girl." I nodded, then rode my bike to school alone. As I held my certificate on stage, I looked down at the row of parent seats. Empty. I remember clenching my fist, swallowing the tears. A week later, sitting on our living room table was Chloe's birthday photo album, 40 pages thick. There were pictures of mom smiling as she lit the candles, dad carrying Chloe, and a house full of cheerful guests. As for the photo of me receiving my award, it didn't exist. From that day on, I stopped telling my mom about my achievements. When I was chosen as class vice monitor, I just smiled quietly. When my teacher praised me in front of the class, I didn't rush home to share. And when I saw Chloe get a brand new bicycle simply because she was sad someone made fun of the old one, I looked at my old bike, the one I'd ridden for 3 years, and said nothing. I wasn't angry. I just learned that in this house my efforts weren't something to be celebrated. They were expected. Mom once hugged Chloe and whispered, "You're mommy's little miracle." I heard it while standing at the kitchen sink doing the dishes. I silently scrubbed one last fork, my hands trembling slightly, then turned away to hide a single tear that fell into the rising steam. I was the good daughter, but no one waited for me to come home before dinner. No one saved me a slice of my favorite cake. No one asked what I learned today, or if I was happy. I grew up like a shadow, quiet enough to go unnoticed. And one day, that very silence taught me how to survive without anyone. But at the time, I didn't yet realize that silence would become the strongest weapon I'd ever own. I started excelling in school in 6th grade, not because I wanted to prove anything, but because inside textbooks, I found more safety than I ever did at the dinner table. Math formulas didn't choke me up. Essay topics didn't make me feel invisible. They gave me another world, a place I could exist without permission. I held the top spot in class for all 4 years of high school. My homeroom teacher called home several times to praise me. One year, I was invited to join the student council as the representative for the junior class. I still remember the day I brought that letter home, my heart full of hope, thinking maybe this time Mom would be proud. But when I walked through the door, I saw her sitting beside Chloe, who was crying because her boyfriend hadn't replied to her text. I stood there holding the paper in my hand, waiting for Mom to look up, but she just waved me off. Can't you see she's upset? Whatever it is, we'll talk later. And that later never came. I slowly learned to hide my accomplishments as if they were some shameful secret. When I got accepted into a STEM scholarship program for girls, I printed out the acceptance letter and left it on the dining table. The next morning, the paper had been pushed aside to make space for Chloe's fruit plate. During dinner, when I tried to mention the group research project I had been selected to lead, Dad spoke up first. "So, how's our Chloe doing? Did that boyfriend call back yet?" Mom chimed in too. "Poor thing, she couldn't sleep all night." I sat there in front of a plate of cold rice, feeling like I had just been slapped, not with a hand, but with a kind of cold indifference that cuts even deeper. But the moment that hurt the most was when I received the official notice from the university. I had been chosen as the valedictorian for graduation. I came home earlier than usual that day, waiting for everyone to gather before I shared the news. I had imagined they'd be surprised, maybe even hug me, maybe call relatives to brag. But after I finished speaking, Mom just blinked and said, "That's nice. But try not to talk about these things too much. It might upset Chloe." Dad added, "She just broke up yesterday. She's going through a lot." Under the table, I clenched my fists. I didn't get angry. I didn't cry. I just felt like I had been quietly and completely erased from the family picture. Chloe, the girl who only had to frown for the whole house to spin around her like the earth had stopped turning. And me? Even at the highest point of my academic life, I was nothing more than a faint sound in a sealed room. That night, I sat alone on the balcony. The breeze was soft, the city lights twinkling in the distance like signals from another world. A world where maybe I would finally be seen. I opened my phone and reread the email from school. "Congratulations. You've been selected as this year's valedictorian in recognition of your academic excellence and meaningful contributions to the student community." I read it over and over again as if trying to convince myself it was real, that I wasn't just imagining my own worth. Then I locked the screen, not because I was sad, but because I knew no one else was going to care about this but me. And in that quiet moment, I understood if I wanted to be seen, to be valued, I had to be the first person to do that for myself. Not my dad, not my mom, no one. Just me and the old dream of a child who once longed to have someone waiting at the end of a school play. A child who once craved a word of praise for an A+ on a test. And now that child had grown up, but still sat there with the same waiting eyes, though no longer full of hope. Maybe that child never disappeared. Maybe she's just been waiting for one moment to finally speak, and that moment is coming very soon. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Even though I barely slept the night before, I still ironed my graduation gown by hand and hung it neatly on the rack. I did my makeup lightly, just a bit of powder, a thin line of eyeliner, a soft peach lipstick. I always hoped Mom would say, "That suits you. You look lovely." I left for school early to prepare for the ceremony. "I'm making breakfast for Chloe. We'll come after," Mom said. I stood in front of the mirror and smiled at myself. This was my day. I didn't know for sure who would show up, but I still hoped at the very least that my parents would be there. I had reminded them since the beginning of the week. Only one student in the entire school gets chosen as valedictorian. In 12 years of studying under dim lights, I had never once asked them to attend a parent-teacher meeting, never demanded anything, only hoped that this time they would sit there in the crowd. When I walked onto that stage, I arrived at school an hour early. The graduation ceremony was held outdoors on the soccer field, now transformed with flags, flowers, and rows of white chairs in perfect alignment. My friends were buzzing around taking pictures with their families. Laughter echoed. Names were called. Camera shutters clicked non-stop. I stood quietly in a corner, phone in hand, waiting for the message I had been hoping to receive all week. And then it came. A short text from my mom. "We won't make it. Too tired after the work week. Wishing you all the best." I read it again and again. My eyes blurred, not because I didn't expect it, but because I had hoped. Hope. The one thing that hurts more deeply than any cut. I took my seat, the one reserved for the valedictorian. My name was printed on a small wooden plaque beside two empty chairs marked "Seats reserved for Emily's parents." I looked to my left, to my right, everyone else was talking, showing off gifts, introducing relatives and me. I had only the wind and the sunlight hitting my face like a spotlight no one asked for. I pulled out my phone, intending to text them a thank you anyway, even though my heart felt hollow. But just then, a news story popped up from Mom's account. I tapped. It was a photo taken at the mall. Chloe was smiling, holding a new handbag, cheeks flushed pink, like someone who just received a surprise gift. Dad stood beside her, his arm around Mom's shoulders. The caption read, "Pushing through the exhaustion to help our baby heal, strongest girl on earth." I froze, not sure if it was anger or the sound of my heart cracking again. I left my seat and walked quickly to the parking lot behind the field. I opened the car door, sat down, and closed it behind me. Inside the stifling silence of the car, I stared at myself in the rearview mirror. My lipstick had smudged. A trace of mascara blurred just under one eye. I couldn't tell if it was from the heat or tears I hadn't even realized had started falling. I asked myself, do they know they just destroyed one of the most important moments of my life? Do they understand that while they were out buying a bag to wipe Chloe's tears? No one asked about mine, no one wiped them, no one even noticed. I didn't scream, I didn't call, I didn't blame. I just sat there letting the pain seep into every silent crack inside me. And then in that quiet, something stirred. If they couldn't see me when I was shining, maybe I needed to shine so brightly they'd never be able to look away again. I wiped my face, reapplied my lipstick, stepped out of the car as if no tears had ever fallen. I walked back to the ceremony, straight to my seat, spine tall, eyes wide open, not searching anymore. Because today, I didn't need anyone to witness my success. I would be that witness myself on that stage in front of the entire school. And if my parents weren't here to hear my speech, then I'd say something they wouldn't be able to forget, no matter where they were. I took a deep breath and waited for my name to be called. This was no longer the moment of a child begging for love. This was the moment of a person who had decided never to let herself be forgotten again. I walked slowly down the path leading to the ceremony grounds, each step echoing clearly amidst the joyful noise all around me. Everyone had someone beside them, fathers hugging their daughters, mothers fixing graduation caps, little brothers chasing after sisters with flowers shouting, "Take a picture with me." And me? I had only the wind and the steady sound of my heels tapping against the concrete. No one looked at me. No one seemed to notice that in this sea of celebration, someone was walking alone. Not because she had no one, but because the ones who were supposed to be there had chosen to be somewhere else. I reached the section reserved for the valedictorian, where rows of white chairs were neatly tied with ribbons, and my name was printed on a small plaque at the front row. I sat down, folded my gown, smoothed the edge gently. Around me were voices chatting, names being called out, camera shutters flashing endlessly. I gave a faint smile to a classmate when he introduced me to his mom. She shook my hand, congratulated me for being chosen to speak. I thanked her, then glanced at the seat beside me, still empty, still reserved for my parents. Though I knew no one would ever sit there, I couldn't tell if I was angry or simply learning how not to wait anymore. This feeling wasn't like before. No burst of fury, no tears threatening to spill, just a quiet recognition. I had hoped again, and once again I was left behind. I remembered the first play I ever performed. I played a silent tree in our third-grade spring show. I waited outside the school gate in my homemade brown costume holding a trembling green paper leaf. But she didn't come. So I stood on stage like a real tree, still and unnoticed. I remembered 7th grade when I was the only student chosen to recite a poem at the school's celebration. I prepared for a week, picked out my best dress, practiced until my voice cracked. But when I came home excited to tell her, she just said, "Oh, I have a work party tomorrow." I remembered 9th grade, the day I won a city-level math medal. The whole school cheered when my name was announced over the speakers. Classmates clapped. But when I texted, I won the prize. I got only, "I'm in a meeting. Let's talk tonight." I swallowed hundreds of tears like that, and every time I did, I told myself, maybe next time will be different. But this time, I didn't believe that anymore. Because I finally understood. No matter how hard you try, it doesn't guarantee love. Not because you're not enough, but because some people simply aren't capable of seeing the value in others unless that value reflects their own pride. Today is the last day I will sit in the audience of my own life, waiting for applause. I looked up at the stage, glowing brighter by the minute. The podium I was about to step onto. It was no longer a place I wished my parents could see me from. It was a place where I would see myself in full light, the light I had longed for my entire childhood. No more tears, no more fragile hopes, just clarity and a promise to myself. This is the last time I will let someone else determine how I feel. Silence does not mean weakness, and walking alone does not mean I'm lonely. Sometimes it's only in silence that we truly find our voice. And today I was ready to speak it in front of the whole school, in front of the world, and in front of my own heart. And now, please welcome this year's valedictorian, a student who has outperformed more than 400 classmates, not only with academic excellence, but also with quiet inspiration. She's someone we believe will leave a deep mark wherever she goes. Please welcome Emily Harper. The applause roared like a rising tide, but I barely heard it. Everything blurred as I stood up, fingers gripping the folded speech in my hand, taking one step after another toward the stage. I didn't look around, didn't search for a familiar face in the crowd. I already knew there would be none, no eyes waiting for me. I climbed the final step. The spotlight hit my face so bright it blurred my vision. I placed the paper on the podium and looked out over the audience, a sea of people filled with families, teachers, friends, and me alone among them all. I opened my mouth, my voice echoed through the microphone, low and steady. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Harper." Before I talk about academics, I want to take a few seconds to thank those who've walked this path with me sometimes, with just a nod, a brief check-in, or simply their presence. I lifted my gaze, unblinking. This speech isn't to claim credit, and it's not meant for applause. It's a thank you to those who stayed, even in silence, and to those who chose to be absent today. The whole auditorium seemed to hold its breath. I could hear the leaves outside rustling faintly, brushing against the frozen air wrapped around the crowd. A few murmurs drifted through. Someone placed a hand on their chest. Someone glanced at their loved one beside them and knee. I stood still. Over the years, I've learned that sometimes what makes you strong isn't who cheers for you. It's the moments you rise on your own when no one calls your name. I paused, eyes locked on the camera streaming live to the school's fan page. No expression, no anger, just the eyes of someone who no longer expected anything from the other side of the screen. In the back rows, a classmate was watching the live stream on her phone. The speech struck her so deeply that without thinking, she commented under the video at Sarah Harper, at John Harper valedictorian of our school. "Wow, your daughter is amazing." The comment quickly got dozens of hearts. No one knew that those two names were my parents. I continued speaking, not looking at the paper anymore, because every word had already been etched into my heart. Maybe the hardest thing isn't the studying or the exams. It's learning how to walk through the pain of being forgotten without letting it define you. And today I'm not standing here to be acknowledged. I'm standing here because I've already acknowledged myself. A wave of applause rose through the air. But I stood still, not bowing, not smiling just yet. I looked down, not searching for anyone, but quietly saying goodbye to the version of me that once lived in those old years. The version that longed for a loving gaze, that cried when no one showed up, that kept trying just to be seen. Today, I didn't need that anymore. I stepped down from the podium. No one knew that somewhere else, two people were staring at their phone screen, unable to speak, because for the first time, they realized they hadn't just missed a ceremony. They had been absent from an entire journey, and that journey went on without them. 2 hours after the ceremony, the afternoon sun had begun to soften, and the parking lot near the school field was nearly empty. The cheerful chatter from earlier had faded, replaced by the sound of car engines and gravel crunching under wheels. I walked slower than everyone else, deliberately falling behind because I knew someone would be waiting, though not to congratulate me. The familiar silver SUV was parked 3 rows over. Chloe was standing outside, hands on her hips, eyes red and puffy, mascara streaked like she'd just finished crying. My mother sat in the passenger seat, staring at her phone screen. My father stood leaning against the car, holding a water bottle, eyes distant. The moment she saw me, Chloe stepped forward. No greeting, no preamble. Her first words came out trembling like an accusation. "Why did you say that on stage? Mom posted a story to congratulate you, but everyone's just messaging about your speech. No one's asking how I'm doing. No one even asks if I'm okay." I looked at her. This girl who had always been held when she was sad, comforted when she was hurt, gifted designer bags after breakups. And now she was crying because I was finally the one being seen. Mom stepped out of the car about to say something, but changed her mind. Dad looked at me, eyes full of things he couldn't bring himself to say, but his lips never moved. At that moment, a teacher passed by. It was the principal, the one who shook my hand after the speech. He stopped, glanced at my family, and smiled kindly. "You're Emily's parents, right? She's incredible. I've never seen a speech silence a crowd like that. You must be so proud." None of the 3 could find words. My mother gave a slight nod, but her eyes darted away. My father twisted the cap of his water bottle, looking down, and Chloe turned away, fresh tears falling again. The teacher walked on, leaving behind a silence that weighed heavy in the air. I didn't blame them. I didn't have the strength to feel angry anymore. I just walked to the car, opened the door, and sat in the back seat. On the ride home, no one spoke for the first 10 minutes. The silence in the car felt thick, almost suffocating. Finally, Chloe broke it. "You could have said it differently. You didn't have to make it sound like you were pointing fingers at us." I turned my head to the window. The rows of trees blurred past my eyes. soft and fading, but not enough to draw another tear. I spoke quiet and clear. I didn't name anyone, but if you felt hurt, then maybe you understand why. Silence filled the car. Mom didn't object. Dad didn't sigh. Chloe didn't reply because for the first time in their lives, they had nothing left to defend, and I had nothing left I needed them to say. We got home just as the sky was turning dark. I carried my suitcase into my room and began gathering a few belongings. No one asked where I was going. No one asked if I was staying for dinner. At the table, there were still just 3 bowls mine was missing, and I wasn't sad anymore because I had long grown used to being absent from moments that should have been shared. That night, I packed my suitcase neatly and left it by the door. And in my heart, I knew I was leaving not just this house, but a role I had clung to my entire childhood, the role of the obedient daughter who was never really seen. And they, only now beginning to notice my presence, were about to lose it for good. 1 week after the graduation ceremony, I received an email from a startup in Seattle, a place I had quietly applied to without telling anyone. The subject line was simple, but it made my heart race. Congratulations, Emily. Welcome to our leadership team. I got in not as an intern, not as a junior assistant, but as a project manager, a role they said requires independence, decisive thinking, and natural leadership. I read it again and again, then sat quietly in front of the screen for several minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Just a small, soft smile spread across my face. The kind of peace I'd never felt when thinking about my future before. That same evening, I received an official invitation from the school. We would be honored to welcome you back as the keynote speaker for next year's opening ceremony. Your graduation speech deeply inspired not only our students, but our entire faculty. I didn't reply right away. I needed time to hold this moment close, not to show off, but to let myself for the first time feel I deserve this. A few days later, my closest friends threw a small celebration in Mia's backyard. The classmate who had silently held my hand after my speech. No fancy wine, no booming speakers, just strings of warm yellow lights hung between tree branches, a wooden table with cake and handwritten cards. On the table was a framed photo of me in my graduation gown standing in the center of the school field, with my right hand raised holding my diploma. There were other pictures too. Ones I didn't know someone had taken where my eyes met the camera, strong and peaceful. Mia handed me a handwritten card. Emily, you have no idea how many people you changed simply by staying silent and then standing up. We see you. We always have. I hugged her. Said nothing because some things don't need words. That night, I posted my graduation photo online for the first time. A simple picture of me standing alone on stage, the school logo behind me, sunlight catching the edge of my gown. The caption was just one sentence. Sometimes you have to stand alone on the stage to realize you never needed anyone else to shine. No tags, no thank yous. But hundreds of people commented and shared. Some old classmates said they cried watching the live stream. Some former teachers sent messages of pride. And somewhere out there, I knew my parents saw it too. They didn't call, didn't text, but I knew. I folded my suitcase shut. The room wasn't filled with much, but it was filled with something lighter. Relief. I didn't take any family photos with me. No memories of being left behind. Only the things I built for myself. Knowledge, strength, and the belief that I no longer needed to wait for anyone to see me. Seattle welcomed me with soft sunlight and a salty ocean breeze. A new chapter had begun without my parents waving goodbye at the station, without a little sister crying because she'd miss me. But I walked forward, light on my feet, because from the moment I stood on that stage, I was no longer a shadow in someone else's story. I was myself, and the light was mine. One late afternoon in Seattle, the sky was clear, and golden sunlight poured like honey across the rooftops. I had just finished work, and strolled slowly beneath the tree-lined streets. I held an iced latte in one hand, while soft, familiar piano music played in my ears. I wasn't rushing, there was no need to hurry. My life no longer felt like a chase after indifference, but a deliberate rhythm. Each breath, a choice. Every moment, a life fully lived. I paused in front of a little cafe on the corner, the one with the wooden table by the window I always picked. Today, instead of opening my laptop like usual, I pulled out a blank sheet of paper and I wrote, not to anyone, just a letter to myself, at 12 years old. Dear you, I know how good you've become at enduring. You tried your best to be the good kid, never a bother, never demanding, never making anyone uncomfortable. You believed that if you were quiet enough, good enough, then you would be loved. But I want you to know, you are always worthy of love, even when no one saw it. Not because you got good grades, not because you held everything together, but simply because you were you. You didn't need to win awards or give speeches on stage to have value. You already had it back when you sat quietly in the corner hugging your old teddy bear, wishing that one day someone would hug you back. I set the pen down. My shoulders felt a little lighter. If you've ever been forgotten by your parents on the most important day of your life, you're not alone. If you've ever sat in a crowd and still felt invisible, I know that feeling. If you've ever worked yourself to the edge just to be seen, and then realized no one noticed, then maybe you were me once too. And if you've chosen silence over blame, walked away instead of begging, grown instead of waiting, then you are stronger than the people who once made you feel small. We don't need revenge, we just need to live brightly enough that our very existence becomes the answer. Where in the world are you watching this story from? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if you've ever had to stand alone on the stage of your life, tell me how you walked through it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you saw yourself in this story, because somewhere out there, someone may be waiting to see themselves in your light.